Hello and welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. Often within the joinery industry, and especially for clients who are just starting out, they feel that clients are taking over their business, so to speak, that they're kind of making strange demands that they can't meet, or changing dates that they don't want to, or controlling their joinery business more than they're comfortable. It's a common complaint we often have to deal with within the joinery industry. Today on the podcast, Bruce goes over some of the methods you can take to controlling clients in a certain degree, what to accept and what not to accept, and to create some standards around client procedures and what to do if they're making certain demands that you don't want to deal with. It can be a hard topic to come to terms with, especially if you're new and you just want to give in to what clients are asking for. If you have any questions about today's episode, be sure to jump on over to the Joinery Business Hub on Facebook. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
Hey, it's Bruce from the Joinery Business Podcast, the Joinery Coach, the Marketing Joint, and a few other fun things. I thought what I'd do today is I would jump into the podcast in a little bit of a casual way, a little bit of a let's just have a conversation sort of a way of doing this. Because as we go into 2024, there are conversations that are happening this year that weren't happening last year as much as they are this year. And we kind of pay attention to those conversations. Because those tend to be the things that the people in our industry are struggling with. And we really do view our position as people that can help others in the industry reduce struggle, create better success, and, just make business a better place to be and make teams better, better places to be and all that kind of fun stuff. So what I thought I'd do in this conversation today is just bring one of the topics to the table that has been, I'm not sure it's the dominating topic, but it's certainly in the top 3 or 5 for sure. So this year, now that the climate has changed a little bit, certainly here in Australia, we have clients in the UK. We've got clients in all over the world, basically, UK, New Zealand, America, Australia. And I can tell you that this conversation exists in all parts of the world that we're helping people in. So I know that isn't a local conversation. It isn't something that's just happening near me. It's something that's happening out in the industry and in our industry in particular, which tends to be dominated a little bit by the building industry. So the conversation that I wanted to pick up on today and to bring to the podcast and invite everybody watching our podcast to participate in this conversation by joining our Facebook group. It's the Joinery Business Hub. Just jump into our Facebook group. If you join, you've just got to answer 3 skill testing questions just to prove that you're human, and they're actually really, really easy questions. And we do that just to make sure that people that are in the hub are actually humans. And we can carry on this conversation a little bit more there in a real live way. So what is the topic, I bet you're wondering? So the topic that has been coming up in, like I say, the top 3 or 5 most common types of conversations in the industry is some customers drive me crazy. We hear joinery business owners say this quite a bit. And it's almost like it's this weird complaint about the customers. And of course, without the customers, you've got no business, right? But a lot of people in this industry complain about their customers doing certain things. So I wanted to pick up on this today and just have a general discussion around it and give you a few pointers to think about. And maybe as a result of this podcast, as a result of this little conversation today, you might take something away from this and approach your customers slightly differently next time. A lot of people say customers are driving me crazy because they're asking for this or they're doing that or whatever it is. We hear this all the time, and we heard it a lot pre-COVID. We heard it a lot during COVID, but COVID kind of created a few other more challenging problems, like supply issues, like being able to run our own schedules because there was so much work for us to do that people got completely overwhelmed and swamped with work. So this conversation tended to take a little bit of a back seat. But now it's back. So when we hear a joinery business owner, and by the way, joinery business owner could be a cabinet making business. You could be making furniture. You could be making commercial type shop fitting, millwork. If you're in North America, quite often we say the word millwork, but you would be somebody that makes product of some kind out of board or wood, sometimes metal, sometimes fabric, but joinery and cabinet making types of businesses. We often hear these owners say, my customer is driving me crazy because they're asking for this or they're asking for that. So I just ask everybody that is, if you've heard yourself or can remember yourself saying this, let's just pause for a second and think about why customers will be saying things like this. And I'm going to present what I consider to be the reality, but I'm going to present something for you to consider very, very deeply. And one of the things that we do at the Joinery Coach is we actually study human nature. We study, just forget about the fact that we're in the joinery and cabinet making industry, and focus on the fact that humans, generally speaking, right across the world, act the same in similar situations. So when we look at human nature and we look at how humans interact, generally speaking, if you have a path to stay on, you will generally stay on that path and you'll end up at the end of where that path takes you. People get lost when they wander off the path and they get frustrated and they get concerned and worried. So humans, just by nature, will generally want to stay on a path, and human nature will be more comfortable if I have a path to go on. And so when you hear friction in a conversation with the customer, if you start feeling like the customer is trying to tell you what to do or trying to guide you, or we often hear the term, the tail is wagging the dog, that conversation. It generally means there's no path. It generally means that the customer is going, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next step is. So I'm going to make my own path. I want to have a path and I want to have a clear direction. I want to know where I'm going to be tomorrow and the next day in this particular relationship. So I'm going to tell the joinery business owner, what next, because there's no clear path for me to have any expectation that there is a next step here. One of the things we do in our coaching program is we create a process. We create a sales process that has steps through the process, right to the point where we've got a close meeting, a close conversation. So as a general rule, we don't want to have a stack of follow-ups to do. I remember many, many years ago when I had my last cabinet making business, one of the biggest sources of stress for me was this big stack of files sitting beside me on my desk that I would look at, and it was files. You guys probably watching this can relate to this. Where I've submitted the quote, I've emailed it to them, or I've sent it to them, or they've come in and picked it up, and they've gone away to think about it. And I don't know what to do with this. I don't know whether I should phone them. Am I being rude? If I'm being too pushy, if I call them. So basically, it's just a stack of stress. So what we want to do at the end of the sales process is eliminate this stack of follow-up by having a closed meeting where the customer is now at the stage where they're ready to say yes or no. Like it or not, at some stage, you're going to get a yes or a no from a client. It's better to get that and move on as quickly as possible rather than having the stack of stress. So we get this by having a very clear path and steps along that path for the customer to go on, knowing that at some stage they're going to end up at the meeting where it's going to be a yes or a no. And most people are pretty comfortable with that. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out that at some point you're going to make a decision. And that really the best time and the best way to make a decision is to do it with the person who you can ask questions about to help you make that decision. So in order to do that comfortably, to have the closed meeting where the customer is comfortable saying yes or no, preferably yes, let's be honest, if we go through this process with the client, you wouldn't do that unless you wanted a yes at the end of it. So in order to get more yeses than nos, we want to be able to comfortably take them through the process where there's no pushiness, there's no selling. And it's really, if you think about if you're selling anything in your mind when you're working with a customer, a lot of people think, well, I'm trying to sell them a kitchen. Really, from the first time we meet, a lot of people that I talk to that are joinery business owners or people that are in the sales department of that business are thinking that every time I meet with a customer, I'm really trying to sell the kitchen. And that's where this problem comes, because the next step is not, I'm going to sell the kitchen, I'm going to sell the kitchen. It's, we don't really know what the next step is. So then the customer starts kind of pushing back and basically making up their own rules. But if you do have a really clear sales process where the first step is, let's just figure out if we're a good fit. We don't even have anything for sale. If we're not a good fit, let's not go any further with this. So that's really the first step. This is the fit. We call this the fit, no fit conversation. And from there, the next step is probably going to be, let's get together and go through some of the details, preferably in the showroom. A lot of joiners are, jump to go out and measure up. You could do that, but it doesn't really add value. But that, whatever your next step is, the point that I'm making here really is we want to make sure that there are clear steps through your process right to the end. So I often paint a picture like this. If you visualize this whole process, think about If you were standing on one side of the creek or a river, depending on where you're on the world, whatever you want to call this, and you really want to get to the other side of it, and there's no bridge, but you can see clear stepping stones to go across the creek. You will very comfortably put one foot on one step and take the next step and the next step, and you'll be on the other side of the creek. If there are no steps and you absolutely have to get to the other side of the creek, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard and you're going to get wet, or you may turn around and go back. So think about your sales process as stepping stones to the other side. The other side is a yes, let's go ahead with this, or a no, but either way, there's going to be a decision. And you will get customers that jump in and start driving the ship if you do not have a clear path for them to follow. There's all kinds of examples of this out in the world. For example, there's a website that I've been on for the last few years that custom makes t-shirts or corporate shirts. And they ask you to fill out all kinds of information. And basically they walk you through the step by step, all kinds of details, measurements, what kind of collar do you want, what color, buttons, the whole thing. And then they get to a point where you place your order and you'll hit go on the order. And then the next thing that pops up, it says, please go back and check all your measurements. Even though you're not saying anything's wrong, it's just saying, check your measurements. Please go back and check sure everything's right. So you go back and check again and then hit go. At one point I felt, well, this is a little arduous. This is a little bit burdensome. But then what I realized in my brain was I actually trust these guys. I really trust them because they're taking the time to walk me through this step by step so that nothing gets missed. And my trust for this business went up quite a few notches when I really realized what was happening. And they had a very clear process. In fact, on their website, they explained right from the start, this is what you're going to experience. We're going to do this and this and this. I realized that their expectation or my expectation when I placed the order was exactly that. If you're getting customers that you might say something negative about, customers are driving you crazy because they're asking for this and they're asking for that, the first thing that I'd encourage you to look at is, do you actually have a sales process that you know what the next step in the process is? So in actual fact, someone could say, well, I'd like you to come and measure up. And you could say, well, actually, our first step is we meet in the showroom and do a fit, no fit conversation. Then you're guiding the process. Then you're actually in control. If you choose to deviate from the process, that's up to you, but it's not up to the customer. You're making that choice. But you have to start out with a known process, a known step through that process. That's the first thing. And if that's missing, as it is for most people that I talk to, most people don't have a documented sales process. And I think one of the reasons for that is if you're in sales in the joinery industry, you probably have had no training in sales whatsoever, and you kind of feel like you're doing it different every single time. So you're going to resist creating it as a standard process. But I can promise you that the people that I work with in this training area of my work, we create a standard process. And the reason that we create a standard process is because when you do things the same way every single time, you can be pretty certain of what the result on the other side is going to be because you do it the same way and you get the same result. If you're doing it differently every single time, the result is going to be a little questionable. The second reason that you would want to have a consistent sales process is because you want to make this very smooth and free of friction. You don't want your potential lead or your potential customers feel like they're being sold to. By having a really smooth process, at some point along that process where they don't feel like they're being sold to, they will actually make the decision before the close meeting. In their mind, they've already made the decision to buy from you. So then when you get to the close meeting, your conversion rate goes up. So there's all kinds of benefits in having a sales process mapped out and very, very standardized. That doesn't mean that at some stages it goes into different directions. You still have control as to what you do at different stages, but the process should be the same. I know when we did this at the Joinery Coach, it changed the game completely for us. I know that when we've done this with clients, it has completely changed the game for them as well. It's taken away the stress of how do we actually convert a potential lead into a client. We've taken away all that stress in the middle. So that's really the first reason why you'd want to do it. The second reason that I want to get you to think about let's say for lack of a better way of describing it, complaining about customers. Again, think about this. You're complaining about the people that are paying you. We really should give this some thought. Customers are going to ask for all kinds of crazy things. They just are. That's just the nature of customers. Even if you have a really clear process and you're taking them through step by step, they may still ask for something a little weird and wonderful and outside of the box. There's never going to be any change in that. I'm willing to bet that you as a customer at some point has asked for something kind of outrageous. There's no harm and there's no foul in a customer asking you for those sorts of things. Sometimes your customer will ask you for that, knowing full well you're not going to do it. The real response really comes down to how do you react, right? So we often react badly to the fact that the customer's asked for something outrageous, but we dip into your emotional intelligence and how you actually respond to that request. That's really the challenge. It's not, we're never going to stop customers for asking for weird and wonderful things, or asking for something 2 weeks earlier than you're able to do it, or $5,000 cheaper. We're never going to stop people from doing that. That tends to exist, as I said at the beginning, in human nature. Humans, and a lot of humans, will just ask for something by nature is a way of, maybe a way of negotiating or whatever. But at the end of the day, they probably will come to the table with you, but they may ask. And what you really want to do, in my opinion, is to question how you're responding to that. You've got really two choices. You can respond in a negative way or a positive way. So the positive way is really the better way to go, because you're then still guiding the customer down the path. You can have a process that says, our lead times are this, anywhere between 5 and 6 weeks, but we need to get the details before we can lock into a date. And a customer might be saying, before we go any further, I need you to lock into a date. Well, okay, it's a fair question, but you're actually not even capable of doing that until you know the details. So, oftentimes when you have your process mapped out, you can just stick to your guns in your process. I guess the second point that I'm trying to make here is, don't get too alarmed or too bent out of shape if a customer is asking for something that might seem unreasonable. That is the nature of customers. And what we really need to do for your own sake is to, modify and change a little bit how you respond to it. Because what you'll find on the other side of that is a much better place. So in short, you've really got two choices. You can create a path and stay on the path and keep your customers on the path, or you can let your customers, in the absence of the path that you've created, if you haven't done that, they're going to create their path and they're going to ask you to come down that path with them. And that's usually going to end in tears, or there's going to be tears along the way. And really, that's not the direction you want to go in. Our most highly performing clients that we've worked with over the years, particularly in their sales department in their business, are the ones that have created a very clear path and process in the sales stage. And essentially what we're doing at any point in the sale is selling the next step in our process. We're not really ever thinking about selling the kitchen or the joinery. We're thinking about selling the next step. At some stage, the next step is going to be the close meeting, and that is where we're going to ask for people to work with us or not work with us. But we're never at any stage of the sales process thinking about selling the joinery. Yes, the end result is we want that, but really, if we're just trying to get people to take the next step, that's a much easier and gentler and less friction-filled way of having conversations. So hopefully there's something that I've said in this conversation here that you can take away. We know that for a lot of people we worked with, it's been a game changer, and hopefully it's the same thing for you. So if you'd like to talk more and have conversations around this, or ask questions or give your feedback, love to hear it. Depending on where you're hearing this or seeing it, could be on YouTube. You can add a comment in our Facebook group. Or if you want to really have a direct conversation with me, you can jump right on our website, thejoinerycoach.com. There's a contact me page. You can book a call and we can have a chat. Thanks for listening. This has been fun, and hopefully you've gotten something from this. Have an awesome day. Cheers.